Okay. All right. So welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. I know there was a request to meet on site. Some people wanted virtual. We decided to go virtual just for, we can't have in-person meetings at our office right now. And we wanted to show us some PowerPoint slides that Bill has put together, as well as this video that some of you may have already seen, but and also just we're working remote, so it's hard to coordinate. It was hard for us as a watershed and city to find some times that worked for all of us. So this was a good option for now, and we definitely are available to meet on site if you guys want in the future. Bill goes out to Casey a lot, was just there yesterday, and so we are definitely very familiar with it, and can hopefully answer all of your or most of your questions today. There's one more person. All right, so to get started, I'm just going to go around and do introductions of the public staff that are on here. I don't know if residents want to as well. I know we recognize a lot of names and faces, which is great. So I'll start with myself. So I am Paige Alberg, and I work for the Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District. Been there about 14 years, which is crazy. But have been our kind of moved positions. When I started, I was our permit inspector and permit coordinator, so managing our stormwater permit program. And then for the last 8 or 9 years have run our stewardship grant program, or our cost share program, which I know some of you have gone through or at least talked with us about. And I can give a little bit more information about that throughout the meeting as well. But I will turn it over to my coworker, Bill.
Hi everyone, my name is Bill Bartoja. I'm the Natural Resources Specialist with the Watershed. I've been with the Watershed for over 20 years now, and I've been involved with Casey Lake management for over 10. So I think we have a really good data set to share with you, and Casey's well studied. So excited to make that data available to everyone today.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. How about Carrie?
Good morning. I'm Carrie Erpenbach. I am the communications consultant for the city of North St. Paul. I've been working with the Watershed to provide more resources to our residents and get that information out publicly in our website, and kind of got this meeting together so we can get this dialogue started and continue to keep our community informed as to what's going on with Casey, our much beloved resource in our city. Now I'd like to kind of pass it over to Ron Ritchie. He's our Public Works Director.
Hi, I'm Ron Ritchie. Like Carrie said, Public Works Director. And this meeting for me is to find out exactly what our responsibilities are as a city, where all that falls in. If you see over my shoulder, I have Randy Miller, who's my assistant, helping me out with stuff. So if you see him back there, he's just kind of so more people kind of know what's going on. So I guess I can turn it over to Lisa Ritchie. I'm not sure what her title is.
I'm administrative assistant for community services. Also
Ron's boss.
Yes. Ron's daughter, I like to say. No, actually, I'm the administrative assistant for community services, and I am also the secretary for the Park and Rec Commission, one of the commissions that I'm secretary for. So that's my involvement with this committee. Nice to meet you, Paige. I know we've talked on the phone a couple times.
Yes, it's good to see your face.
And then Paige, I think if we could bring up maybe our council member, Tim Cole.
Good morning.
Yeah,
how is everybody today?
Good.
Well, thank you.
Tim Cole, council member for North St. Paul. My primary goal to come out of here is just to start good dialogue around Casey Lake, and there's a lot of history amongst the residents of when the lake's water level was much higher than, we call it a lake, when the lake's water level was much higher than what it was, when there was weeds, when there wasn't weeds, when there was, there's a lot of concern, a lot of question, a lot of misinformation, I think, that maybe spread. So I'm hoping to clarify a lot of that today, and be able to move forward and see what we can get done.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. And then Rob Dodd, if you could just do a quick introduction, if you wouldn't mind.
Of course. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rob Dodd. I work for the Minnesota DNR Aquatic Plant Management Unit, which is in fisheries. My work area is the entire metro plus Chisago County. And my job boils down to issuing permits that allow for recreation on public waters, and I'm balancing that with protecting native aquatic plants. And today I'm just here to learn more about this particular lake. I don't believe I've ever been there. I've certainly approved a couple permits, but just looking to get some background information before I do meet some of our neighbors on site there in North St. Paul.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. Glad you're here today. All right. Well, I think that's all of our kind of public staff. I think everyone else here are residents that live on or near Casey Lake. So at this time, I'm going to start by showing the video, and you guys all have time to ask questions at the end, but I'm going to start with this video. The city posted a link to the full video, but we still wanted to show part of it just to get the ball rolling. Introduction to the watershed and what we do and what we have seen on other shallow lakes in the area. So this is a getting to know shallow lakes video. So bear with me as I hopefully get this figured out without any issues. And again, this is just a 5-minute portion. The full one is on our website or on the city's website, and that's about, I think, a little bit under 10 minutes. So, okay, you guys see that? Okay, now hopefully you can hear it.
Well, shallow lakes have a different dynamic because
sound.
they don't what they call turnover because they aren't deep water lakes. Deep water lakes have a cold layer and a warm layer, and in the fall when the seasons change, it tends to recycle. Deep lakes tend to be cleaner because they can kind of segregate that higher nutrient colder water during the summer. And shallow lakes get warm throughout. They have a lot of lake turbulence because even wind can turn over the water, and it's all those nutrients that are stuck in the lake sediments resuspend. So not only do you have phosphorus and sediment and all these nutrients washing into the lake, there's also all these lake sediments that recirculate and cause really high levels of phosphorus, particularly in our area, that causes algae blooms and feed the lake plant. Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District is now very urban, but looking back to the 1940s, the district was primarily agriculture. There was a higher level of accumulation and more phosphorus was accumulating in those sediments during those ag periods. And all the sediments go into these shallow lakes and just kind of accumulate, and they hold those sediments. We had to look at how can we sequester those nutrients into sediment and not let them resuspend so easily. We also saw that there was a large population of carp in some of these lakes. Working with the university, we developed a way to try to identify how many carp are there. Is the population too high that the system can't support it? Then how can we remove them?
Well, if you have too many carp, really what they do is they just root in the bottom or dig in the bottom looking for food. So it's a very simple process by which they disturb lakes. So they disturb the sediment and essentially they uproot aquatic vegetation. So there's no way vegetation can grow in those lakes. If you don't have any vegetation in the lake, then the water turns green because all of those nutrients are used by algae. If you net enough of them, then the lakes pretty much change immediately. The lake is clear and there's a lot of vegetation in the lake. So it doesn't take long for the lakes to come back.
The reason the lake was free of plants previously was that the lake was so cloudy and such poor water quality that the plants couldn't grow. But then you have an algae-dominated system where you have, dangerous and awful algae blooms throughout part of the year.
The alternative is green lakes with a lot of algae.
Shallow lakes exist in two states, and this is the difference between a deep lake. They either want to be in a turbid, algae-dominated lake where the water is really green or brown, there's not a lot of vegetation, it's not.
Sorry. Well, Okay, that might be it for the video. Sorry about that, but hopefully has most people been able to see the video?
Yes.
See some heads nodding. Okay. Well. All
We
right.
also have the full version of the videos archived on the city's website too, if people would like to reference that at another time.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. And what Bill's going to talk about is going to touch on some of this. But I did forget to, sorry, I was caught up in all the introductions we did and didn't really even give an intro to Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District. I know most of you are familiar with us and have heard of us, but for those of you who have not, we are a local unit of government that is tasked with managing stormwater and making sure that our, oh, sorry, now it's playing again. I don't think you guys can hear it though. It's just in my head. All right. Okay, so tasked with stormwater management, making sure that our lakes and streams and wetlands are meeting state water quality standards. We have a water quality team or crew that goes out and does water quality sampling. We do that in partnership with Ramsey County. A lot of what we do is partnership with our cities and 2 counties that we cover. We cover a lot of Ramsey County and then a little bit of Washington County. So we're all the way from Shoreview, the southern part of Shoreview, down to Woodbury and Oakdale. We cover all of, well, pretty much all of North St. Paul, Silver Lake areas in a different watershed district or area. But we cover most of Maplewood. So we have a big area that we're working with to protect our waters that are in there. Cliff Eichinger, who was on the start of that video, is our longtime, I guess he was our longtime administrator, kind of started out with the watershed district and then is now a board member, and he is a longtime resident of North St. Paul. So just wanted to point that out so that you know that North St. Paul is important to us, and obviously that's on the front of his mind all the time. So wanted to mention that. With our water quality team, we also have an education person. I guess she kind of works on her own, but she, again, is with partnerships with our schools. She does a lot with churches, Boy Scout groups, things like that to help get the community involved in projects and what we do and just spread the education, because that's a lot of what we do. We have a very small team, about 15, 16 full-time people, and then 3 or 4 interns every year that help us do our work. So it's looking to these other organizations to get projects in the ground and make sure that our the message about water quality is spread to others. So along with that, we have a permit program that I mentioned I started out with when I started with Watershed District. So we, with that, we have a stormwater management rules guidebook that we enforce for new construction and reconstruction. So those types of projects are required to put in stormwater best management practices, or BMPs, that help clean stormwater before it leaves the site. And those go in. So you've probably seen some, there's a lot of construction going on in North St. Paul now, which is great. And all of those are required to have these water quality measures in to make sure that the stormwater leaving the site is meeting standards and it gets filtered and cleaned out, hopefully infiltrated back into the ground so it can get into the groundwater. That doesn't always happen in an urban area, but we try to at least get that filtration. And then along with that, so that's where people are required to do those types of projects. Then we have our stewardship grant program, which I work for now and or help manage. And with that, we have people, some residents of Casey have come to us and asked for projects. They're interested in water quality, rain gardens or planting with native vegetation, getting pollinator plants in the ground. We have grants that help with that. And these are for people who are not required to do something. So it's homeowners, it can be businesses, churches, other government organizations. We work a lot with cities to do, if they're maybe doing a road reconstruction, if they're required to put something in, then we can also work with them to find something that goes above and beyond what they're required to do and get additional treatment in. And one of our biggest projects right now is actually in North St. Paul at the Target store. So if you haven't been out there yet, it's pretty amazing. We were pretty excited to work with Target. We did a big project with them last year at their St. Paul store off 94 and Suburban Avenue. So put in several rain gardens and some tree trenches, and that's what's going in at North St. Paul as well. And that project, thankfully, it didn't rain much this year in that regard. I mean, we really wanted the rain, but it didn't cause any delays or anything for that project. So they should be wrapping up soon, hopefully getting plants in the rain gardens soon, and then trees in those tree trenches we'll keep an eye on and make sure they get enough water as well. But that's one we're very excited about. So we look for those types of projects as a long-term method of cleaning up our lakes and streams. So we're looking for more than just a temporary fix. We're looking for long-term solutions to get that phosphorus out of stormwater and other, these types of projects also help keep trash out of our water bodies. If any of you have ever been to like Maplewood Mall, we have put in several rain gardens, and the biggest complaint from the mall out there is that those rain gardens collect all the trash. Well, yes, but they're keeping that trash out of Coleman Lake. So that's another way to help just clean up our water bodies. So we're always looking for big projects like that. I'm looking for opportunities. We have our own grant funds for these big projects. So we're always on the lookout for partners, especially big places like Target, where they have multiple campuses in our district where we can spread that. And obviously Target has stores all over. So they hopefully will take what they're learning here and put those in their other campuses around the state, metro state, and country. So Bill, I don't know if I missed anything with our district, but otherwise, I'll turn it over to you to talk about Casey Lake specifics, and I can pull up your PowerPoint slides.
Yeah, it sounds good.
All right.
All right, so we put together a few slides that summarizes the management that has taken place in Casey over the last 10 years. And we want to really keep this informal. So if you have a question, feel free to ask it right away. And Paige, maybe you could kind of keep track of that. I can't see everyone. So
yes, I will try.
The better.
Yeah.
And feel free to chime in whenever you would like. So in 2010 and several years prior, Casey was in a turbid water state. So this means that it had very low water clarity caused by an abundance of algae in the water. And this was caused by extremely high carp numbers. So the carp biomass that we measured in Casey was the highest level that we have ever seen in a lake or pond system in the watershed. So super elevated carp densities. And we saw a little clip of carp feeding on the bottom, and with all the carp in Casey and that feeding activity on the lake bottom sediments, that caused phosphorus to be released from the lake bottom sediments and be liberated in the water column. So phosphorus is a limiting nutrient for algae. And with elevated phosphorus levels, we had an abundance of algal blooms taking place in Casey. So without much light penetrating into the water column, we really didn't have much rooted aquatic vegetation in Casey. So this causes an imbalance in a system like this, in shallow lake systems. Have a chance to watch that video if you haven't yet watched that video. It does a really good job summarizing the two different states that shallow lakes are most likely in. So one being this turbid state. And our fish sampling, we really didn't detect any appreciable game fish numbers. So we really didn't have many bass or bluegill, a few crappie, but that's about it. Before we move on, are there any questions?
Yeah, I do. Jim Selshaw here, resident. I live about a half a block away and walk the lake frequently. During this period of time, did we get algae blooms? Because most of the residents here recall the lake surface anyway, being quite clear at that time. But of course, when I'm looking at the screen here, it looks like there's a lot of algae on top of you. So we remember it being quite clear until the carp went away. So that's my question.
Yeah, I'll show you. We have a really good data set going back several years prior to the carp elimination. And for at least 5 years, we had conditions where maybe clarity was 6 inches. So I hate to argue with what residents recall, but the data that we have suggests that Casey was in this turbid state for several years prior to carp management.
Yeah.
And I'll show you a couple data slides, and we could go through that. Are there any other questions? Okay, so intensive management began in 2012, and we, going into the winter of 2013, we lowered the water level in Casey, drew that water level down, and basically froze out all of the carp in Casey Lake. And this was very effective. We did extensive netting in 2013 with the University of Minnesota and did not detect any carp at all. So that drawdown was super effective in eliminating that the carp population in Casey. So how did Casey respond? Really dramatically. So in 2013, Casey flipped into this clear water state. And this is a photo showing a rock on the lake bottom, and we had this gin clear water after the carp elimination. And we partnered in 2013, we partnered with the DNR to stock Casey with bluegill and largemouth bass, and then also install an aeration system. And we're partnering with the city today to keep that aerator running in the winter. So we need to open up an area of Casey to help increase dissolved oxygen during the winter in order to carry those game fish populations through winter. So 2013 was kind of utopia. We didn't have excessive aquatic plant growth, and we had this super gin clear water. It was really the best case scenario. But going into 2014, the aquatic plants really took over, and we had an incredible growth rate, so much so that the aquatic plants hit the water surface, and then we had a nice mat of algae develop, filamentous algae develop on top of those aquatic plants. So we obtained permits for DNR to do aquatic vegetation harvesting in Casey, and the main goal here is striking a balance between recreation, aesthetics, water quality, and aquatic plant harvesting. And the best way to do this is with harvesting versus chemical. Kind of a side benefit is taking plant material out. We're also taking phosphorus and nitrogen out of that system, significant quantities. So that was really attractive to us, as well as opening up Casey for recreation. So over the last 8 years, Casey has continued to be in a clear water state. This picture was taken last evening. And that water quality exists today. So we have better water quality. We just did a fish survey out on Casey this past summer, and we have a really nice population of bluegill and largemouth bass. And of course, we have that abundant plant growth. So this year with the drought, we weren't able to harvest out on Casey because the harvesting contractor wasn't able to get his harvester in Casey because of the low water. So I talked to him with the recent rains that we've had. I've been in communication with him, and he's booked pretty solid, but I'm trying to twist his arm to get him out over the next couple of weeks. So hopefully that will take place so we get a harvesting event in there before winter. So we'd like to remove some of that plant biomass going into winter, because if we have too much plant material, it really has a drain on the oxygen levels in the water and threatens that fish community. So that's one of the main reasons we want to do a later season harvesting and kind of set us up for the winter and get those game fish populations through the winter.
What is I have a question. What is the deepest spot in the lake?
Oh, it's, during normal water level, it's about 3.5 feet. So it's an extremely shallow system.
I'm just wondering how the fish are supposed to survive on a freeze out. I know the aerator's there, but
right. And if we didn't have the aerator there, they most likely wouldn't survive. So that's a really essential management tool. And we really appreciate the partnership that we have with the city. It's worked quite well, and it's a huge benefit for Casey Lake.
Can I ask a sedimentation question?
Yeah.
I'm Elaine Exted. We own the southern tip of Casey and all the cattails all the way around on the southeast corner. We moved out there into my grandmother's house in 2011. And so I attended some watershed district meetings all during that carp situation because I was interested in what was happening there. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until this last spring that North St. Paul finally came out and cleaned out the storm sewer that goes underneath the street that comes, it's right on the southern tip. And so for the last 10 years, all the sediment has been running in and coming in to that southern tip. And as a result, we're getting more property, which is fine, but there's just a lot of buildup in the southern tip of Casey. And as a result, the cattails obviously are moving out too. And I'm just wondering if at some point this lake is going to be a swamp as opposed to a lake.
Well, we'll take a look at that, Elaine. I wasn't aware of that, but we'll definitely check that out. And I know we removed some sediment on the little swale going into Casey on the opposite side.
Right.
So that's definitely a maintenance item that is done, periodically. So we could check out that area for you and share our take on that with you.
Okay. I mean, I understand that it's a meandering lake. I understand that my grandmother actually, our property line supposedly goes 650 feet out because it did actually dry up in the past at some point. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering, future. And I guess my other question is about cattail management, but that's another problem.
Right. And I know, maybe Rob could chime in on this. So individual shoreland owners have the opportunity to manage cattail and algae in front of their properties. So there may be an opportunity for you to do some sort of management with the cattail, but that's a DNR permitting issue that falls in their purview. So.
I just want to jump in, Mario Gonzalez Mitchell. We live on the north side, and hello.
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh, so
Hi, Mario.
Yeah, so Elaine, we feel the same way. It's looking pretty swampish over here as well. And I know I spoke with several people, including the DNR and Parks and Rec, and working on getting one of those permits so I can start clearing out more shoreline as well. So I'm definitely looking forward to hearing what the city and what we can work together to achieve.
The other problem is the trash. I mean, because of that storm sewer coming in and because we're right next to the park, I took an entire package of brand new socks. I mean, I always fill at least a full garbage bag from the trash that ends up in Casey, that ends up in our yard in the spring. So, and I know when we take our paddle boat out, when we can, when there aren't too many weeds in the lake, we usually take a garbage bag with us and a little picker and try to pick up some of the trash around the lake as well. I don't know, there's no way to solve that problem.
Yeah, that's a tough one, and that's just an artifact of the stormwater the system. So what we've done in the past is partner with volunteer groups to do trash collections, and we're even out on the shores of the Lake Phelan picking up plastic bottles twice a year with volunteers. So that's definitely something that you could coordinate with your neighbors and get out and collect garbage, and we'd be willing to assist you with that as well.
This is Rob with the DNR. To look at the cattails, we would need an aquatic plant management permit. I receive those applications and issue those. I can get directions out to the email list that we all received with the meeting invite. The purpose of the permits is to allow access for recreation on the pond. So we would start there. After that, with a very shallow lake, cattails can spread rather quickly. These are most likely hybrid cattails. I haven't been to Casey Lake yet. I will be out there this fall, so I'll confirm that. But there could be an opportunity to remove a little more than the usual permit if the landowners are interested in planting native species to replace the cattails that are removed. So providing some habitat for pollinators, just providing more abundant emergent plants are what we're talking about for the cattails and bulrush and sedge and iris and other things to keep the shoreline stabilized, keep the aquatic plants in this natural environment lake that are doing a lot for water quality, that are doing a lot for the fish that my colleagues stocked. So that's the cattail spiel. I'll take any questions.
Rob, I would be interested in meeting with you when you come out to look at Casey. Sure. If you could connect with me via email and I'd like to walk you along the shoreline and show you what things look like from our end of the lake.
That was the next question. Yeah. What property can I get permission to access? So I will definitely do that. Thank you. Thank you for the invite.
I also extend that gracious invite. North side. I just sent you my email and my address as well, Rob.
Oh, there it is in the chat. Yes. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Oh, I'll do the same thing.
Thank you. And It's not required, but it would save a step if we could do the permit application prior to the site visit, but it's not required this time of year. And I will get the directions for the application out shortly after the meeting today.
This is Jim Selshaw speaking. It appears that there's a lot of sediment. I mean, when we had this low water level, which is somewhat been resolved by the recent rainfall, but near the shorelines are that the depth, even when there is water in the lake, is only maybe 1.5 feet deep. So the harvester cannot get into the shoreline at all because even when the water level is that's supposedly controlled level. So harvesting is somewhat marginal because typically about a week or two later, the surface of the lake is pretty much being taken over by the aquatic vegetation again. So a couple of the ideas that a few neighbors and I have talked about was potentially maybe getting some of that sediment out of there, of course, resulting in more lake depth, if you will, and also then raising the level of the lake so that at least the harvester can get back in there, and maybe it wouldn't be quite so susceptible to semi-drought or drought conditions like it is now. And from what I can observe from on the east side of the lake, raising the level wouldn't be that detrimental to anything along there, would interfere with the paths or anything like that. So that's a couple of ideas that I was tossing around. I like to, in other words, I guess what I'm suggesting is that could we study it further?
We would definitely have to bring in a DNR hydrologist when we're talking about adjusting the ordinary high water mark. And I can get you contact information for that person, but that's definitely beyond my area of expertise. But I'll give the watershed district an opportunity to comment on the lake level and the dredging ideas right now.
Rob, Carey from the city of North St. Paul.
Sure.
On all these applications and stuff, we have built some content on our website to help our residents in our community better understand what's going on. So if you could forward the links to those applications and those resources, I'd like to have a permanent archive for our residents so they have a place to go back to the city's website and access that information. So if you could forward that to us, we will be more than happy to add that to our resources.
Okay, I'll get the basic information out to everybody. Yeah, thank you.
Paige, do you want to address that water level question?
Yes, it's a big, Jim, that's a big thing. And like Rob said, we'd have to do studies and look at that. I don't know. Dredging and adjusting water levels is kind of a big undertaking, and making sure that you get, looking at the cost benefit. We can't obviously have any detrimental effects downstream either. So we have to make sure, which is different when we're, if we were trying to lower it, that's a bigger issue. If we're sending water downstream, this is a little bit different, but it's a big engineering undertaking. Bill, I don't know if it's been looked at this point. We've had so much water the last 4 or 5 years that I don't think it has been recently looked at by any means.
Yeah, I don't think it has. I know if you're going to do a significant dredging operation out there, it'll cost millions of dollars, and there would be a series of permits that would have to be obtained. So it's a massive undertaking to do something like that. And I think you would need more justification than, I want to get a harvester close to shore and harvest plants. So there has to be a solid hydrological reason to raise the elevation of Casey.
Yeah, and as far as sediment control, that's why we do these bigger projects, and invite residents to put in rain gardens. That's why we have these grants available, because those also help capture that sediment that goes into these water bodies. I mean, they go into all stormwater ponds. It's a big problem for cities as cleaning out that material. It's kind of an ongoing struggle. So that's another part of these, another benefit of these best management practices that we help install. Go ahead, Elaine. Did you have another question?
I was just gonna say, when the when they did finally come out this spring and dug out the ditch that should have been dug out, that was supposed to have a holding pond that was no longer there. They weren't able to even leave the dirt that was there. They said they had to take it off to a waste place.
Yeah,
So
a lot of
even-
it's, yeah, a lot of, I mean, it's our pollutants that come off of our roads. That's kind of nasty stuff. So they need to make sure it's sampled and has to be disposed of properly. Not to, I don't want to cut off questions at this point, but Bill has a few more slides. So should we keep going through those, Bill? And those might address some of your questions.
Yep, just 2 more slides here.
Okay.
So here's a quick look at Casey's water quality, as I mentioned. So 2013 is when we had the carp elimination. And if you look at total phosphorus levels prior, we had in 2008 levels over 500 micrograms per liter, and then that kind of leveled off to right around 200, which is extremely high for a system like Casey. And this is most likely due to that carp feeding activity. And after elimination, that total phosphorus concentrations dropped over 50% to just under 100 micrograms per liter. So this is a pretty solid baseline for a system like Casey. This is a decent number. And then if we look at transparency or water clarity, again, in 2013, we saw significant change. So getting to your question, I think it was Jim had mentioned, well, you know, we remember Casey being clear before carp were taken out. These data suggest that Casey was in that really turbid water state for a number of years prior to carp elimination. And then after we had Casey in that clear water state, so water transparency was 2.5, 3 feet. So we could most often see the lake bottom when we're canoeing in Casey, where prior, when we had those high carp densities, that wasn't possible. Are there any questions concerning these data?
Well, my only comment would be that, yes, I'm sure the water quality was better. I don't question that whatsoever. It's just that when the surface is covered with weeds, it's hard to see the water quality. So.
Yeah, I know it's really difficult to accept that. I totally get it, and that's kind of a change of perception that needs to take place. And it's just kind of what we have become accustomed to. In Minnesota, we have a lot of deep lakes, and you know, deep lakes act differently than shallow lakes. Lush aquatic plant growth in shallow lakes is normal, and sometimes we do have this filamentous algal mat growing on top of vegetation, and that's just part of the deal. But we realize that, you know, there's a balance there. So that's why we are harvesting and doing it strategically, because we understand that, what you're saying, Jim, and we want to strike that balance. So that's what we're trying to do in Casey.
My only comment would be then, a follow-up would be that harvesting, to my knowledge, was only happening a couple of times a summer. And with the weeds growing back rapidly and covering the surface again, that maybe we could increase that to harvest more frequently.
Yeah, I think, you know, with harvesting in Casey, if we, you know, it's all about striking that balance. So if we go out there and harvest 3 or 4 times, we may flip that system into a turbid water state. Nobody wants that. So we really have to be careful in the quantity of plant material that we take out. So that's a concern, and that's a really a situation that we want to really be careful and take it seriously, because we can't flip this system and have those really turbid conditions and blue-green algal blooms, and nobody wants that.
This is Rob again with Aquatic Plant Management. I just want to, second everything Bill said and reiterate, with a very shallow lake, here it's only 3.5 feet deep. I'm surprised it's not classified as a public waters wetland, but we do have to realize that abundant aquatic plants is going to be the norm. And that is better than what we've seen in the past. We can still do some management, and Bill's balanced approach is the course that I would support.
Got a few questions. What would happen if we left the aerator on all year and maybe even added a second one?
Well, what would be your objective? Why would you want to do that?
Well, would it help at all? Like, okay, you harvest once or twice a year,
Mm-hmm.
and the what other purpose does that aerator provide?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the main purpose is pumping or allowing dissolved oxygen to kind of be dispersed through the water column in the winter to keep the game fish alive. So that's the main goal with the aeration system. Sometimes aerators are used in the summer, kind of like most often fountains are put in ponds. You see that quite often. In those systems, they have really low dissolved oxygen in the summertime. So that kind of helps with smell and with algal blooms, with water quality management, essentially. In KC, you don't have that issue. Your dissolved oxygen levels in the summertime are fine. They're really high. So having that aerator run in the summertime, there's really no benefit to it. It may clear a little area where you don't have, duckweed and it looks open, but that would only be like maybe a 50 square foot area or something like that. So you're really not gaining much at all by running that aerator.
Got it. Yeah, I know a couple of friends have some properties on some of the bigger lakes here, and they do that to keep their the aquatic weeds or whatever they're called.
Sure.
From their docks. Okay, so then we've been here a couple years. I've spoken to almost all the homeowners on the lake. I've heard a lot of different stories. The one that I have a question about is the idea to make it deeper, put a basin in it, kind of like Silver Lake. And it was taken, it sounds like fairly serious, but then the budget wasn't there. It wasn't on it didn't make the budget. So, and does anybody know about that? Is that just like the telephone game? Is that completely inaccurate?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know when you say it was taken pretty serious, who that was taken seriously by. I don't think it's something the watershed would look at. That's a big, like Bill said, just to dredge a lake to remove existing sediment is a big undertaking. So to make something deeper is a huge undertaking. So I don't know if the residents talked to the city about that or DNR. Yeah, I don't know about that proposal.
Well, this is Jim Zelsher speaking. What I'm hearing is that we're not going to really take any action, except for maybe removing some cattails. And we have to live with it the way it is.
Well, let me go to our last slide, and we could talk about that, Jim. All right, so this is a summary of the current management that's taking place in Casey. So the watershed's committed to harvesting 2 times during the growing season. That has worked in the past, and it seems like we're striking the balance in that approach. Continue to partner with the city on aeration, which is really important in that during that winter time. And then we're doing annual water quality monitoring in Casey. So adding to that really solid data set that we have. As I mentioned, we're doing fish assessments. We were out this past summer, and we still have a really nice, healthy bluegill and bass population, which benefits the neighborhood incredibly. And then, as Paige mentioned, we're looking at water management opportunities in the Casey watershed to reduce that stormwater input into the system. So we're doing a lot on Casey, and I know it's not a crystal clear deep water system like a lot of people would want, but for a shallow lake system, it's in really nice shape. And it has significantly improved over the last 10 years.
Oh, this is Tim Cole. If I can chime in on a couple of points and questions that I have. I guess one of my questions is, does Ramsey-Washington Watershed District control the level of the lake by what is drained off of it? Oh, cute puppy.
Sorry, that's my puppy. I can't figure out how to stop sharing though. There we go.
So, Paige, you want to answer that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tim. I was distracted trying to figure out my technology. Can you repeat that?
You're fine. I'm hearing conflicting stories that the watershed district has the ability to, for lack of a better word, raise and lower the level of the water as far as what amount of water is drained off. In fact, it was brought up in what was it, 2012, when you killed off the carp, that you lower the water level of the lake so you can freeze the lake out. So is there some control as to what the actual depth or height that the watershed district controls?
So the carp removal was a temporary drawdown.
Right.
Yes, so we have that ability, barring you make sure we have all the proper permits and approvals in place. We have that ability. Adjusting permanent water levels is something, we can look at doing different outlet structures and things like that. It takes a large amount of studies, again, mentioning that just looking at downstream impacts of things, we can't cause any adverse impacts downstream. So there has to be a definite need for it. I would say the couple examples I can think of where we modified outlets was for flood control. So protecting homes from being flooded due to high water levels. And we can definitely talk with our administrator, Tina, a little bit more about that, but I made a note to ask her about it and have our engineers look at that. That's something to follow up on.
Okay, so I guess my question is just, I live half a block away from the lake at the south end. Been a 23-year resident, and I do mirror some of the questions and concerns of the other residents as well. The lake has been deeper. And I guess part of my question is, was the outlet structure changed to lower the level of the lake within the last 10 to 15 years? I do remember the lake level being much higher than it has even prior to the drought this year.
Bill, I don't know the history on that outlet. Do you know?
Yeah, I know.
know.
My great grandfather built it. They made a trench that it goes out the west side of the lake, and it goes into a wetland area just to the east of White Bear Avenue. And that's kind of the beginning, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, of the Phelan chain. It was, in fact, Casey was considered a carp nursery because it was feeding that. As I was growing up, there was actually a board back there in that ditch. And my dad would go out and raise it and lower it to adjust the lake level because of our homes on the low level side. And we're actually in the floodplain. In the 10 years we have been there, we have seen the lake higher than I've ever seen it and lower than I've ever seen it. So what's surprising to me is how much the lake level has changed dramatically, and not just because of the draining for the carp. I mean, we had water coming up, practically to our garage. I had a blue heron sitting on our fire ring in our backyard. I mean, it's been really, really high and it's been really, really low. But when they came in some years ago and redid that whole ditch structure on the west side, that's Maplewood. That is actually the city of Maplewood over there. And they installed a different kind of system. And I don't know who controls it now. I mean, the watershed obviously knows something about that, but I don't know how it's adjusted now.
So Elaine, you're right. There was a modification of the outlet structure, improvement to be able to raise and lower that outlet elevation, but it now is set at the normal water level. So that is,
Okay.
determined through historical water levels and vegetation along the shoreline. So that is set. And in order to change that, we would have to go through this elaborate permitting process. And I think DNR would have the ultimate say in that adjustment. So that's nothing that the watershed could say, oh, we just want to raise it and pop a couple boards in that outlet structure and call
Doesn't work that way anymore?
Doesn't work that way. Maybe back when your grandfather or great grandfather was in charge, yes, but not anymore.
So Rob, who do we need to talk to start those conversations of potentially raising the water level? Even if it's 6 inches, I don't know if that's going to provide any health concerns to the lake, but Bill, what I heard from you is there needs to be a balance. There needs to be a balance between aesthetics of the lake and the health of the lake. And all the slides and everything that were shown shows that since 2010, the health of the lake has gotten much healthier. The majority of the residents that are on the phone are on the aesthetic side, and they would beg to differ that while the health of the lake may look good in charts and graphs, it doesn't look better to the eye. So I understand Jim's concern when he references that there's nothing we can do. So I guess I would like to challenge the group to figure out solutions as to what we can do to make a happy balance between the health of the lake, the aesthetics of the lake, the level of the lake, and who do we need to contact to start this process?
Yes, sir. That would be the DNR hydrologist. I can get that information to you directly after the meeting. They know the exact elevation of the ordinary high water marks, for all of the water bodies, the public waters, at least in their work areas. And any adjustments, whether it's a drawdown or an increase, which I've been with the DNR 15 years, but I haven't heard of an increase. There's a first time for everything, of course, but I will get you that information soon after the meeting.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Tim. And I can have our administrator and our engineers start looking at that at a high level, just to say if it's even something we can go forward with or not. So we can look at that as well. yeah, we are at 10 o'clock. People, looks like some people are jumping off. I want to be mindful of everyone's time, but I know I'm available, and I think Bill can stick around for a little bit too if people still have questions.
No, I'd just like to second what City Council man Tim Cole said. I think we should do something to get the ball rolling anyway, to at least study the issue to see if we can't make some improvements other than just removing cattails.
Yep, sounds good.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with James and Tim as well, being on the north side. We've been in St. Paul for 21 years and just moved over here. And it doesn't smell good and it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
When we're outside and we're hosting and, you know, doing anything, it's pretty filthy looking, at least.
Yeah, and that's a good segue back to our stewardship grant program. A lot of what we do, you know, we keep harping on this partnerships. There's only, you know, we as a watershed look at the things Bill listed off, trying to get those long-term fixes, but that's why we have our grant program for residents to do this, since you have such a small water body, and a lot of the water going into Casey Lake comes from your neighborhood. It's getting people to get away from traditional lawns, looking at native plants, helping, you know, remove those pollutants at the source. You know, even using rain barrels, going through the adopt a drain program, keeping your storm sewers clean, or the storm gutters clean. So that's a good way to pick up trash too. You know, they see it collecting on the storm gutters, pick that up, throw it away. And looking at rain gardens, you know, we've done some with the city of North St. Paul, and we can work with them to get what we call curb cut rain gardens in. So those rain gardens can go right on your street, and the street water is the most polluted. It takes all of the nasty pollution from our cars and whatnot, everything that falls on the street that normally would drain into Casey Lake. We can put rain gardens in there and cut a portion of the curb so that it collects that street runoff and cleans it, filters it out through different soil types and native plants, and helps clean that before it gets into the lake. So just another longer term solution and a good amenity for your yard. Get some native pollinator friendly plants in there, other things like that. So just, yeah, being mindful of what goes into the water is key for, you know, you guys have a great, just based on the number of people who joined today, people who care about the lake and whatnot, and making sure that everyone's doing what they can too to help the water quality there.
A couple of points. One would be, if you're recording the session, can you send across a link so other people can watch us at a later date?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send it to Carrie for sure. We'll have it available, but I think Carrie was going to post it on the city website.
We'll add it to our lake resource page so it'll be archived for anybody in the city who wants to watch it.
And the other thing that really didn't get brought up, but refers back to what the other neighbor was saying, is that it really boils down to property values. It's great to have the premier park located so, you know, conveniently for all that use it, but when it seems like it's covered with a green slime, it doesn't help our property values either. So.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Elaine, for jumping in. All right. Anything else?
We'll do it.
Say, I read something about like Silver Lake, Casey Lake, Southwood Park being formed by some glaciers. Like, is this really accurate?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Bill, do you want to touch on that?
Is that Mario?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is me. I'm reading something deep history, North St. Paul. Yeah. It said there's a good starting point for a brief description of the city's natural history is the end of the last glacial period. As the glacier receded, large amounts of till and sand were deposited on tops of material previously deposited by earlier glaciers. Hills, plains, lakes, streams, and wetlands were formed. Some of the natural features have shaped the city's land use and are still visible today. Notable natural amenities are Silver Lake, Casey Lake, Southwood Park, and the Drainage Way. The Urban Ecological Center. Yeah, is that, you guys know about that?
Yeah, that's definitely, looking back at the geology and topography and what we have today, the glaciers played a significant role in what we have. So no doubt about it. What is driving the systems now is urban development and that stormwater entering the system and the salts over the last 100 years on Casey Lake and the input to that system. So the last 100 years have had a dramatic effect on that system and how we manage that system now. So, looking way back, the glaciers had an effect on the topography and the geology and the formation of Casey. But what we're focusing now are the stressors or the stormwater management component and what we have to deal with right now. So.
Right. Well, appreciate you guys' time. I gotta go.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for
Thanks,
being
Mark.
here. Good to see you, Mario. Thanks everyone else for joining.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.